I never thought I'd see it with my own eyes, my 30-foot cabin cruiser drifting out into the bay, blasting music balloons tied to the rails. Strangers clinking champagne flutes, and at the wheel, wearing oversized sunglasses and a smug grin, was Karen Miller, the president of our HOA. She wasn't just stealing my boat, she was parading it like her royal yacht. Hours later, the Coast Guard had her pinned, hauled off in front of the entire neighborhood, and that was only the beginning of the madness. My name's Mark Reynolds. I live with my wife in Lakewood Shores, one of those neighborhoods with manicured lawns, golf carts buzzing around, and an HOA that thinks it's Congress. I'd bought that boat after years of saving my escape from all the pettiness on land. The one person who couldn't stand that idea was Karen, the HOA president. She wasn't just strict, she thrived on control. She'd already tried to fine me for the color of my porch light, sent me letters about my lawn, and most memorably demanded I cut down a perfectly healthy oak tree because, according to her, it interfered with her sunset view. I refused, and from that moment, she had a vendetta. That Saturday morning, my buddy Jake woke me up with a flood of voicemails. He said my boat was out in the bay with people on it. I thought it was a joke until I looked out the window and saw neighbors gathered, pointing, recording, laughing. There was Karen at the helm of my cruiser, one hand on the wheel, the other raising a champagne glass like she was launching the Titanic. I sprinted outside, and Jake was already on my driveway grinning like he'd bought front-row tickets. He said Karen had been bragging at the clubhouse the night before about hosting a marina gala to elevate the neighborhood's culture. My jaw dropped. I shouted across the water, but Karen only waved like a queen greeting her subjects and yelled something about community assets. The crowd on shore roared with laughter because even the die-hard HOA sticklers knew she'd lost her mind. I stood there numb. My boat had been triple-locked at the dock. I had the only keys. And yet here she was acting like HOA bylaws were the Constitution. My wife asked if she should call the sheriff, maybe even the Coast Guard. I told her to wait. I wanted to see how far Karen would go. Jake whispered, "Let her dig her own grave." So I did the unthinkable. I grabbed a chair, cracked open a soda, and sat down like I was watching a comedy show. Soon, half the neighborhood followed my lead, dragging out lawn chairs, treating it like a spectacle. The laughter turned to murmurs when Karen drifted too far into the open channel. Jake pointed out flashing lights in the distance, the Coast Guard. My pulse quickened, but it wasn't fear. It was anticipation. Karen wanted an audience, and now she was about to get one she couldn't control. When the patrol boat arrived, she tried to wave them off, shouting that she had HOA authority. The officer asked, calm and professional, "Ma'am, are you the registered owner of this vessel?" She hesitated, then blurted that she was temporarily authorized. The officer's face said it all. This woman was delusional. He turned to me on the dock. I raised my hand. "Yes, sir. I'm the owner. Still paying off the loan." The crowd erupted in laughter. Karen's face turned crimson. The Coast Guard boarded guests started panicking, and Karen clung to the wheel like a toddler refusing to give up a toy. When the officer pried her hand off, the silence was deafening. Phones captured every second as Karen screeched that she was being targeted for being a woman in leadership. Nobody bought it. She was escorted off in restraints while her entourage melted away in embarrassment. And in that moment, I thought it was over. But Karen doesn't lose. She retaliates. The very next morning, my inbox was flooded with emails from the HOA board. Karen had spun the story overnight. Now I was the villain. She accused me of negligence, claimed I'd left the boat unlocked, said she was only protecting it from vandals. Some of her allies echoed her warning that I had endangered the community. Reading those words, I froze. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should have called the sheriff sooner. Maybe letting it play out had backfired. That night, sitting in front of my laptop, I honestly thought about selling the boat, washing my hands of it all. My wife came over, laid a hand on my shoulder, and said, "You didn't do anything wrong. If you cave now, she'll own this whole neighborhood." She was right. Jake sealed it when he showed me clips he'd saved Karen bragging about reclaiming community assets like my boat. Suddenly, I wasn't just defending myself. I was defending everyone she'd bullied with fines and threats. So I gathered every piece of evidence Coast Guard reports videos from neighbors and prepared for the emergency HOA meeting that Thursday. The clubhouse was packed like a county fair. People were tailgating and the parking lot golf carts lined the street. Inside, Karen sat at the head table in a bright red blazer, chin high, eyes blazing. She opened with a speech about how she was a selfless leader unfairly persecuted. She said she only took my boat to boost community morale. Some neighbors chuckled out loud. Then it was my turn. I kept my tone measured. I reminded everyone of the Coast Guard report, showed the video clips of Karen at the helm, champagne in hand, shouting about bylaws. The room exploded in laughter and boos. Karen doubled down, yelling that I was negligent, that the whole thing was staged. Then, in a move that stunned even her allies, she proposed a new rule. Every private boat in the community should be reclassified as shared property under the HOA. Gasps filled the room. Then came the receipts. Ruth, one of the board members, slammed down paperwork showing Karen had tried to bill the HOA for catering and decorations from her stolen boat gala. That was it, the last straw. Neighbors erupted, shouting for her removal, some demanding charges. Karen lost control, screaming at board members, accusing everyone of jealousy and conspiracy. She even pulled out a gavel she'd brought herself, slammed it so hard it broke in half. Jake whispered behind me, "Perfect metaphor." Finally, the board called for a vote. Out of nearly 70 residents, 61 voted to strip Karen of her presidency. The room shook with cheers. Karen stood trembling, shouting that it was illegitimate, that she'd sue us all the way to the Supreme Court. Nobody listened. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the lights flickered. For once, the HOA board acted quickly. The Coast Guard filed charges: trespassing, theft, reckless endangerment. The man who'd fallen overboard during her stunt pressed charges too. Neighbors who once defended her went silent. And Karen. She went from HOA tyrant to laughingstock on local news videos of her meltdown, played on repeat. I didn't celebrate. I just stood on my dock that night looking out at the calm lake, the same water she'd tried to conquer with entitlement. She'd been stripped of her power not because I shouted the loudest, but because her own arrogance drowned her. And that's the lesson I walked away with. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stay calm. Let arrogance burn itself out and stand your ground until the truth speaks louder than the lies.